Welcome back to the mainstream. Dan, you're back.
I am back.
You've had a restful break, I believe, having your third child.
Yeah.
Busy at home with 3 children now.
Well, it's great to be back. Very happy to have an excuse to get out of the house at the moment, so that's good. So good to be here. No, we've got a boy this time, 2 girls and a boy, so we're very excited. So
good stuff.
Very good, but I will be putting my pool cue in the rack, as they say now. So
one for mum, one for dad, one for the country.
We've done our bit to get the population growth back up.
You've done your bit for Australia.
Done our bit.
Well, speaking of you doing your bit for Australia, Dan, you had a phenomenal media release last week. Straight back into it, back to work and back to leading the public debate. Bob Hawke would have supported Pauline Hanson's vision for a fair and equal Australia. What was this all about?
I think so. Well, so this came in the context of Senator Hanson gave an interview, and she called for, amongst other things, an end of Welcome to Country ceremonies being performed at things such as schools and other areas of life. And that is something that is pretty consistent with mainstream opinion. We've got a lot of polling to support that. But what I thought was interesting, because this was happening in the context of the Labor Party national convention that they have once every 3 years. So in this period, it was held in Adelaide. And you had all of this, very far left rhetoric, including the Australian Manufacturers Union saying that the Australian flag or the Union Jack on the flag is a symbol of colonial oppression. And you look at it and you look at someone like a Bob Hawke, or even go further back a Ben Chifley, would they have actually recognised the Labor Party of today? You look at a speech that Bob Hawke gave, for example, the 1988 bicentennial speech that was given on the steps, the Sydney Opera House, Australian flags everywhere, thousands and thousands of people proud to be Australian.
We had a reenactment of the first fleet
arrival with a Labor Prime Minister. And he gave the famous speech where he said, in Australia, there's no hierarchy of descent, there is no privilege of origin. And so what is welcome to country or acknowledgement of country if it's not privileging certain people based upon their origin or their race or their other immutable characteristics? So my contention was simply that Bob Hawke would have supported what Pauline Hanson was saying in wanting to remove this practice from being so ubiquitous in our society. I thought it was pretty uncontentious and reasonable.
Well, I think most, we know that ordinary Australians agree with, as you mentioned, we've done plenty of polling on this issue. It really is the welcome to country, an acknowledgement of country really is it's something that only really sits within the elite class. Ordinary people are fed up with them. They've had enough of them.
Yeah.
One person, plenty of support for your piece that you put out, but one person did take exception. There was an interesting article in the Age newspaper.
We love the Age.
We do love.
We love the Age because they magnify your. I mean, the whole point was to get the argument magnified, and straight on cue, he writes a nice little story and just more people hear the argument. So thank you very much to the Age and SMH for amplifying our argument to the people.
Well, exactly, and it's what's interesting about this article is I was reading through it, thinking. He's saying that you're wrong, and that Bob Hawke would in fact have supported Welcome to Country and the modern,
everything that goes
increasingly segmented society that we live in.
Yeah.
And his evidence so your evidence was Bob Hawke's words, things that he said, and things that he believed and clearly put forward. And this columnist's evidence is that Bob Hawke promised to work towards a treaty in 1988, but then he didn't deliver this treaty. He didn't progress this treaty. He finished as Prime Minister having not delivered a treaty. So, I mean, it's a strange argument to make that you're wrong, Bob Hawke would have supported this because here's something that he did not do.
Well, I think what's interesting also is it's elicited, you always know that an argument or a perspective strikes a chord when it elicits responses to it. Yeah. And I think it's in the broader context of the fact that the Labor Party of today is completely unrecognisable from the Labor Party of a generation ago. And the Welcome to Country component, or the 3 flags, or having motions about the Australian flag being a symbol of oppression, is an example of how far the Labor Party has moved and drifted from that time. And I think everybody basically recognises and understands that. Hence why there's, passionate responses to what we've been arguing, basically.
Yeah. Well, and I after I read your piece, I was reminded of another speech that Bob Hawke gave in 1988, and so I went back and looked at that as well. And he sets out very clearly his view. So this is late in 1988. He sets out his view about multiculturalism, which is we'll get on to multiculturalism, very prominent topic of discussion at the moment in Australian politics. But what Bob Hawke said is that under his conception of multiculturalism, there should be an overriding commitment to the future of our nation. All Australians must accept the basic structures of Australian society, which includes our rule of law, parliamentary democracy, and English as our national language. And he specifically says, all Australians, whether Aboriginal, immigrant, or Australian born, should take pride in their history and traditions and contribute to the future of the nation. So Hawke wanted to bring us together as Australians. And this is the thing I think, that's often missing in the debate now about multiculturalism. The multiculturalism that we have in 2026 is explicitly not about bringing us together. It's about living. It's about maintaining and entrenching differences and segmentation in society.
And I think with multiculturalism, I think it's been described as you can think of it as benign multiculturalism that we used to have and active multiculturalism that we have today. So the benign multiculturalism was people can come from different parts of the world, provided it's taking place under the rubric of a shared culture and values and expectations. And also with this kind of undertone that over time, there's going to be a certain level of integration and assimilation into mainstream Australian society. And certainly government would not actively discourage that assimilation from taking place. What is now happening is we have a plethora of government programs that explicitly seek to reduce the likelihood that people of different cultures are going to come into contact with one another. They encourage separatism. They encourage people to see each other as separate. Also, the multiculturalism of the past, and you've nicely outlined it there with Bob Hawke, but you could also mention Keating, John Howard and other leaders who overlaid that with a sense of Australia as a good country. You're coming to a good country. You should be proud to be Australian. We want you to make a contribution to our country. Now you come here and you're told by a lot of leaders that Australia is a bad country, that we're a racist country, and that there is nothing to be proud of in becoming an Australian citizen. So the overall, I guess, contextual background to the current migration policy is always going to lead new migrants to defaulting away from mainstream Australian values and society and defaulting to their own enclaves as a result of that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Keating in 1996. So just after he finished up as Prime Minister, he said a similar thing to Hawke. What Hawke had said in 88. Keating said that multiculturalism, basically, he quotes this definition of multiculturalism, which is people with different roots can coexist, and that they can and should look across the frontiers of race, language, gender, and age without prejudice or illusion. And he again, the exact same thing as Hawke. He says that there are responsibilities involved with multiculturalism. The first loyalty of all Australians must be to Australia. And then he says that we must accept the basic principles of Australian society, including our constitution, the rule of law, parliamentary democracy, freedom of speech and religion, English as a national language, he mentions again, equality of the sexes and tolerance. And, I think this is something that sometimes goes a little bit under the radar, is how fundamentally the definition of multiculturalism has shifted. We've kind of kept using the same word over time, but it's shifted from that benign or like inclusive in the true meaning of the word inclusive. Like including everyone in Australia.
In our story.
In our story, exactly. But it's shifted fundamentally to something completely different. And just picking up on, the thread of the English language, the Albanese government infamously had their multicultural review delivered recently that said that we should think about offering the citizenship test in languages other than English, which is an incredibly radical proposal, which has kind of gone a little bit unnoticed. And Anna Lee, who's the multicultural minister for multicultural affairs, she said this in a speech last year. It's incredible. It's there in black and white, that we should define multicultural Australia not as a monolith of common cultural values or even multiple common cultural values. She says that multiculturalism cannot be having common cultural values.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
It's incredible to me, because the whole point of multiculturalism, and the reason why you can have a debate over how broadly it was supported after it was brought in the 1970s, but I think it was accepted. Whether or not, in public polling kind of shows through time, it's always been a contentious policy. But I think Australians supported it because it was this idea that it doesn't matter where you come from, your background, your religion, your race. You come to Australia, you join Team Australia, we're all moving forward in a positive direction in Australia. But now what we're being told by our government, by our federal government, is that we cannot have a set of common cultural values. That's what it says.
Why has it changed so much? I mean, it's sort of in the space of a couple of decades, there's been, you can sort of debate, to what extent did Labor leaders like Bob Hawke or Paul Keating actually believe this stuff? To what extent did they believe they just had to say it because they knew that it's what Australians would accept? That's all fair enough to debate. But even if they just felt they had to say it, it still says something significant about what they understood the Australian mentality towards immigration to be. But now, it's, as you say, they're not even pretending anymore. It's explicitly to dilute our majority culture. Why? It just sort of strikes me that, why has it changed so dramatically? What's the motivation behind it, do you think?
Well, it depends how deep you want to go.
I want to go deep. I want to go.
Well, if you go back and you look at back when Al Grassby was immigration minister, when the Whitlam government was elected, he implemented this idea of multiculturalism pretty much straight away. And he made an incredible comment in an interview in January 1973, where he said that migrants should be allowed to live in their ethnic enclaves if they wanted to. He thought that didn't matter. There's a fantastic book. It's an academic study called The Origins of Multiculturalism in Australian Politics, 1945 to 1975.
Sounds like a riveting.
It
sounds like
it's an important. It documents how multiculturalism came to be our policy, how we moved from the White Australia policy through an idea of assimilation and having a large post-war migration policy based on assimilation, and then moving through to multiculturalism. Anyway, if you go and read the text, and he interviews all the academics and the activists who are involved. He goes through speeches and policy papers and documents, contemporaneous documents. All of the activists who are involved in pushing multiculturalism onto the political class, they all had what we have now. That was their intention from the beginning, a lot of them.
Yeah.
So a lot of them did believe all along in this kind of ethnic and cultural segmentation. And there's an incredible quote, which I've quoted on my Substack, one of the leading academics who is responsible for multiculturalism as a policy. He was an advisor. He advised Al Grassby on this, and now Anna Lee has pointed to his work as a great influence on her.
Yep.
He gave the quote to the author of this book on the origins of multiculturalism, and he said that we basically had to present it in this way to Australians because they never would have accepted it if we told them what it was going to be.
Yeah.
So, there's, some people will say that sounds a little bit crazy. Maybe it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but that's the great thing about this book. What it sets down in real detail is just the contemporaneous documents. You just go read the paper trail, and it's all there from the very beginning. So,
well, it's a loaded term, and this is why I think it's, the idea that there's a conservative form of multiculturalism, I don't think is correct. I think multiculturalism itself as a terminology is something that is inherently promulgated by those who seek to dilute Australia's majority culture. And it is true that, as I say, you can have more benign implementations of it, which is what happened under John Howard.
Mm-hmm.
John Howard basically, when he was Prime Minister, basically retired the term from. He never really promoted multiculturalism. He removed multiculturalism from a government department name. I think it was Immigration and Multiculturalism. It got renamed to Immigration and Citizenship, I think. So it wasn't like we're going to encourage this, but it wasn't replaced. Right? It sat there. The underlying edifice and infrastructure sat there. The coalition didn't remove it or change it when in government. And so that was just then picked up again. And then Kevin Rudd had his Big Australia policy, which was bringing more people in on top of the multiculturalism framework. And that's been retained ever since. And now it's been turbocharged. So I think this is why Pauline Hanson's monoculturalism conception has struck a chord and shaped the debate, because it's the only real alternative concept that has been put to Australians. I'm not saying it's the best concept or the only one, but we haven't actually had a debate about multiculturalism really in this kind of way for a long time.
Well, yeah, we basically, no one in the political class has been willing to go there.
Yeah.
Since Howard, actually, when he was opposition leader in the 80s, he had a crack.
It's too difficult to
but it was
undo, or it was...
Well, I think then there was, internal machinations of the Liberal Party, and he lost the leadership. And once he got the leadership of the Liberal Party back, and then when he won the election in '96, I think, as you said, my impression, and interestingly, John Howard wrote a piece in The Australian this week where he was putting forward his view on multiculturalism. I think that John Howard thought we can just kind of let the term go, as you said. We'll accept racial and other differences, ethnic differences, but we're just going to really focus on the symbols, the events that unite us.
Yeah. So he was big on one set of rules, equality before the law.
Yeah.
He was completely opposed to things like a treaty, saying, well, you can't have a treaty with yourself, everyone has to be equal. So I think Howard was able to sort of, like, if you go back to the mid to late 90s, you can sort of understand that might have been the best approach, because, now that we're here, we know that it's causing a lot of problems. But back then you go, well, this might actually be okay. I think he probably... You could say he got it right in the times that he lived.
Yeah.
But the problem is that we're now in very different times, and clearly it's not working anymore.
Yeah. No, we are. Which I think this is, I mentioned this piece that John Howard has written, and I think if you read, the headline is, frankly, I do not know what monoculture means in Australia. So it's clearly it's a veiled attack on, or it's a veiled criticism of Pauline Hanson's use of the term monoculture. But if you read his piece and then you read what Pauline Hanson said, they're really not that far away from each other, actually. They're both saying that that migration is fine. Australians don't have a problem with migration, provided that it doesn't impose too great a strain on our infrastructure, so that it doesn't cause economic harm and dislocation and clog up infrastructure. And he also says that existing citizens do not want new arrivals bringing their homegrown hatreds and enmities to this country.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at what Hanson said, again, whether or not monoculture itself is the right term to use, I think is kind of beside the point. They're really not that far away from each other in what they're arguing, which is we don't really care about your racial differences or your ethnic differences. We want everyone to commit to our common set of institutions and our common Australian culture, which, again, you go back to Hawke, you go back to Keating, they talk about our Australian culture and the institutions that we've built that culture on, which includes English as our national language, and the rule of law, parliamentary democracy, all these things. So yeah, it certainly is, I think, a positive thing for Australians that we're finally having this debate, which has been denied for so long.
And we know that it's really having an impact, because we've just had news that Tony Burke, who's the immigration minister, was going to give a speech to the National Press Club on. So we're talking today on the Wednesday. So he was going to give the speech on the Thursday of this week. That speech has been cancelled. Apparently, in that speech, he was going to outline changes to Labor's immigration policy. Now, we don't know what those changes are. Could have been, some people are writing that it was big, going to be big cuts to the immigration numbers, but whatever it is, he didn't get it through cabinet. So now they're going to wait. Anthony Albanese's on holidays, of course. So now they're going to wait for Albanese to come home before they figure out what they think about immigration.
Yeah.
But this is I think, very significant from a lot of perspectives. Firstly, it shows that obviously politically, One Nation is dramatically affecting Labor. So obviously they're concerned about it because immigration is One Nation's number one issue. And obviously Labor are concerned about immigration, of One Nation taking Labor's vote on the back of immigration. It also shows that Labor is very divided on this issue. And so, yeah, I think it shows that this issue isn't going to go away and that the government doesn't really know how to deal with it either.
Yeah. Well, when you say that the Labor Party or the government is divided, do you mean they're divided in what they think about the immigration policy, or are they divided, is it, from a values perspective, they're divided about that, or they're divided about the tactics of how to contend with One Nation?
Oh, I think it's all of them. I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some in the Labor Party who want to reduce immigration because they understand the impacts of it.
They might have noticed that their name is Labor
Party. They want to do something that's good for workers, maybe.
Yeah.
That might be a part of it.
Could be.
I think the tactics around One Nation is a big part, because some would say, well, why would we respond to what One Nation's saying? Let's just ignore them. Others would say, we can't do that. And this is what happens. I mean, they've got a lot of seats in the outer suburbs. A lot of blue-collar workers who were negatively affected by immigration.
Yeah.
But then they've also got a lot of seats in affluent inner-city areas who support migration, who support multiculturalism. So they are divided in that way as well, I think. What do you reckon? Do you think they're divided in those ways, or you reckon there's something else going on?
I think that I think that the division is more likely about the tactics.
Right.
Because I think what the Labor Party is not divided on is that their main interest is anything that is to the obvious, raw benefit of the Labor Party politically. So I think that that's what that's what unites them, is power.
Yeah.
The pursuit of power. So I would suspect that what's dividing them is the politics of it, the tactics.
Yeah.
Should we concede ground to One Nation? Should we go and fight on effectively? Should we go fight on One Nation's on the grounds that they've laid out? Should we go fight on their terms of debate, or should we hope that the One Nation surge is just a blip? That by the time the 2028 election comes, Australians would have, that it would have run out of steam, or they would put this behind them. So I would suspect that that's where
I think they now know it's not a blip. I think this is why they're trying to do something. So to start with, they would have gone, oh, well, let's just wait and see. And now, what is it? Where are we? August. It's almost a year. I think it's not a blip. So the penny has dropped. They need to do something. If they, politically, the penny has dropped for enough of them that they're going to have to do something about it. And doing something about it means immigration.
But you mentioned we don't know exactly what the updated policy is. We should hear more about it in the coming weeks. But in the ABC report, they said that it was going to be far-reaching changes to migration settings, and they've used the words that the package of measures was going to achieve a quick and drastic cut to net migration. So it sounds
like they can control migration numbers now, can they?
No, well, Dan, no. It was just post-COVID. It just happened.
I was always told that they don't have control over the numbers, that it's set by other parameters and they can't. But now we're told, oh, you can control it, right? So they can actually bring down the numbers.
Well,
so the massive influx has been a choice. You know how many people verbaled me over that? Oh, well, they don't really have control now. Oh, we can cut it.
This was the whole post-COVID thing, right?
It was all a lie.
It was just snap back. It just happened.
It just happened.
There's nothing wrong to do about it.
Yeah. Oh, all of a sudden there's 1.5 million more people. Oh, it just happened.
It just happened for a country that for 2 years, better part of 2 years, close to more than that actually, literally quarantined itself from the world.
Yeah.
You could not get in or out. And then it said, well, actually, we can't do anything. We have no control over our borders. But the point that I'm getting at here is apparently they can control it, as you say. But if you look at the measures that the ABC has reported on, tougher family visa rules, a cap on the number of backpackers in the country, and restrictions on the work and appeal rights of asylum seekers.
There's the backpackers. They're the problem.
So backpackers,
It's the backpackers.
backpackers staying in hostels and
They're a big economic burden, kid.
well, I mean, that's the reason why I can't afford to buy a house.
Yeah, that's the big burden.
It's the backpackers, and alongside the backpackers, it's the asylum seekers.
Yeah.
That is the problem. I mean, this is insane to think that this could have any impact really on what's going on in the country.
Do you reckon it's just a sop?
Well,
They'll come out, they'll say, "Oh, we're doing something." They'll put out some bogus projections, and then they just want people to believe that they're doing something even when they're not. So they can have one message for the MPs who want more migration, and then one message for those who want less, and they can both go out and say they're doing both.
Exactly. They can talk out of both sides of their mouth. Because you'll notice what's missing from that list.
What, cutting?
Foreign students,
So they're
maybe?
Yeah.
Who are, if I'm not mistaken, the largest
single biggest cohort as defined in the metrics.
the migration. Right.
Hi, thanks for watching. Did you know that 3/4 of you watching this podcast aren't currently subscribed to the IPA's YouTube channel? So do us a favour, hit subscribe and you won't miss any of the action. While you're at it, head to ipa.org.au, follow the prompts to subscribe to the IPA's website, so that way you'll find all of our research and analysis. Now back to the chat.
So really, I think what this is, well, again, we shouldn't put words in their mouth because they haven't announced the policy yet. But what that indicates is that this is a way of them placating Australians, telling them, "Oh, we're onto it. We're dealing with the issue of immigration. We're cutting numbers drastically." While at the same time, they're not doing anything to actually meaningfully address the numbers. And I think that insofar as you think that is a correct assessment, they're not really going to do anything to bring the numbers down.
I don't think that.
They just want to have the appearance. They want to claim that they are.
Yeah.
Because we know as well, when the Labor Party came in, they said, when they won the election in 2022, they said that we have one of the largest temporary worker populations in the world. And, that's not good enough. And it's undermining working Australians and their wages, and it's not good for the country. And no one ever asked, and this system has been not managed properly. Claire O'Neill gave the speech where she said that. And then the numbers continued to grow. The number of temporary resident workers continued to grow. Yeah. So since the 2022 election, they've done nothing but encourage this unplanned, uncapped migration scheme. And now they're turning around after the damage is done and saying, we're going to
fix it.
We're going to do something about this.
So anyway, watch this space. I think it's interesting. But it shows, like you say, Labor doesn't know how to deal with one nation, it looks like. And But the thing is that they're dominated by sectional interests as well. Yeah. So they may genuinely want to cut it, but they probably can't because of all the sectional interests that dominate the Labor Party. The universities support big migration, big business supports it, the migration agents support it, many of the ethnic associations support it, and these are what is feeding into the Labor Party. So it may be the case now that our immigration policy has been so wholly taken over by sectional interests that it's beyond the capability of any government to actually do anything about it.
I think it also, getting to the broader conversation about this is how the Labor Party are trying to respond to one nation. And I think, for want of a better term, this populist wave, this populist backlash. And I think the question is, can you put the genie back in the bottle? Like you said, it's been a year and the One Nation surge is clearly not a blip. But do you think that either the Labor or the Liberal Party can they actually address that? Or is One Nation now just part of our political environment?
Well, I think One Nation's a part of the environment, but I think if you look abroad, there are examples of left-wing parties doing similar things. So you look at Canada, where Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister, did actually drastically cut immigration to the point where they had negative population growth for one period in last year. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, in Canada, I don't think they've had the same populist surge through a third party. Right, that could be a part of it. But they have, even before then, they didn't really have it. So it could be a different environment as well. The other interesting one to look out for, though, is the UK. So obviously, you change the Prime Minister, there's Andy Burnham. And you can see what the play is. The play is you've got people here like Chris Minns, Peter Malinauskas, Roger Cook. I mean, Andy Burnham is like the equivalent of them. Like, let's pretend that these guys are reasonable centrists who are there for the common person. They're not these radicals, but they will do as much radical stuff as they can until people start pushing back on it. It's just a question of how long can you pull the wool over their eyes for.
Yeah.
And so the play in the UK is, let's get Andy Burnham. He's from the north. I think he's in his late 50s. He was mayor of Manchester for, when was he mayor? 2017 to 2026. And the idea is that, this guy will fix the problems. People see him as a normal person. So far, he hasn't said anything about immigration that I'm aware of, nothing major. But it wouldn't surprise me if he starts talking about it.
Yeah.
But all they need to do, right, this is the interesting thing. The play is just to, because if you're Labor here, right?
Yeah.
What you want is One Nation to succeed to the point that they crush the Liberals.
Yeah.
So you don't want to destroy One Nation. You want One Nation to be healthy, but not too healthy.
Yeah.
So all they need to do is stop people leaving Labor. And so they just have to convince a relatively small percentage of the population, which is the cohort that vote Labor but would vote One Nation, to not change. That's all they're aiming for here. So they will do just enough to do what they think is needed to stop that cohort, because they don't want people leaving One Nation going back to the Liberal Party, because they don't want to crush One Nation. So that's the play. Same as in the UK.
Yeah.
Reform has crushed the Conservatives.
Yeah.
They are now crushing Labor. And if election were held when Keir Starmer was Prime Minister, Nigel would have been PM.
Well, interesting. You'll remember when Keir Starmer literally said, well, Nigel Farage is the leader of the opposition now.
Yeah.
He said he's the opposition party,
Exactly.
which speaks to your point. Yeah.
So I don't know if they're thinking in these terms, but if I'm sitting in the Labor Party, and look, it's hard to triangulate this stuff, right? But that would be the game. So I think it can succeed, because at the end of the day, there's three things that are needed for a populist change to take place. You've got to have the cultural patriotism, which obviously One Nation has. You've got to have pro-worker economic policies, which is a question mark. And you've got to have some kind of credible attack on the corrupt and incompetent political establishment, which is nothing really happening policy-wise yet.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same as Reform UK. Nigel is all about immigration. He's all about get rid of the woke stuff. He's all about the UK flag, all of this stuff. He did give a speech a little while ago on economics, which was almost solely focused on too many people on welfare. Now, that's worthy of debate, but that is not a pro-worker economic populist message.
Yeah.
So I don't. So again, Labor, when people go to the polls, the type of person who's votes Labor might vote One Nation. So they don't like Albo, they don't like the woke stuff, but they go, you know what, actually, Labor is a safer bet because they will take care of Medicare. My wife is a nurse and she needs the union to do well. I'm in a precarious job, so if I lose my job, I don't trust Liberals. I'm not sure about One Nation. So I don't like all of this other stuff, but you know what? I'm still going to trust Labor with those things. That's what happened in the last federal election. It wasn't a vote. It wasn't an enthusiastic vote for Labor. It was just I don't trust Liberals with the economy as it relates to a lower income individual, and that's basically what I think they could easily succeed at. So yeah, I think it can work. Now whether they can figure this out and do it, I don't know, but there is a path to if they're able to do that, it would be very bad for the country, but it would clearly be political genius.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting point. Like they want to keep. They want to keep One Nation alive.
Yeah, your opponent's divided. It's like the DLP.
Yeah. Well, divide and conquer, right?
Yeah.
Like keep them. Yeah. No, it's. I think it's a fascinating time in Australian politics, but for ordinary people, it's not
great.
It's not a fascinating time. I think you look at wages, you look at inflation, you look at house prices.
Yeah. But you don't want fascinating. You want boring.
Well, exactly right.
If you're a punter, you want life to just be rolling on.
Well, yeah, you want quiet and comfortable. Like you want quiet and comfort. Basically, you don't want to be focusing on politics.
Yeah.
And I think this is, but I kind of come back to it again about whether you can contain the One Nation thing. So many people are so fed up because they feel like they have to care about politics all the time, and there's an interesting case to be made that it was the left who made everything about politics. They forced politics into everything.
Yep.
Right? You can't go to the footy without getting a political lecture, basically.
Yep.
And now ordinary people have kind of said, well, if you want me to, participate in politics, and I'll tell you what I think, like Pauline Hanson has my vote, basically.
Yep.
So now trying to kind of depoliticize a public environment that they've created, that the political class has created, because they politicized everything, but then made it so that you can't debate anything.
Yeah.
So they said everything is political, but you're not going to get a vote on net zero. You're not going to get a vote on immigration. All the largest, kind of most significant, broad scope questions about our country and about our future, they said you don't get a say. So I think that it clearly, this potential move on immigration shows that the Labor Party, despite what some people would say in public commentary, that One Nation is just cannibalising the Liberals, the Labor Party are clearly bleeding votes to One Nation. They're trying to do something to stop it. But I'm not convinced that you can stop the populist wave once it breaks out, because we've seen this all around the world. Once the populist kind of movement happens, once people find this voice, they find a home for their vote. These disaffected people find a home for their voice, and someone who gives them a voice and find a home for their vote. It's really, really hard to put that genie back in the bottle.
Well, and once you identify with a new party, you tend to stick with it because you've sort of got your identity invested in it. So it's harder to get you to unstick. It's easy to get people to stop and not change. It's harder to get people to change back to a party.
Yeah.
The other thing here, this is an interesting thought experiment that I want to get your perspective on, and I will hold you to this if it comes to fruition. But
okay.
But I'm interested in again, we talk a lot about what's happening around the world because many other countries are down this path 10 or 20 years, I don't want to say ahead in terms of like its progress or regress. It's just they've gone through this over the last 10 or 20 years and we can learn things. Yes, there's different voting systems, different cultures, lots of different domestic political issues. So it's not a like for like, but it's instructive. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we've seen in some other countries, particularly continental Europe, is the mainstream parties or the established parties, let's say, have often decided to work together to exclude the populist insurgency. And so and Germany was a prime example of that. Yeah. So what I'm interested in Australia is, say, let's go to the next federal election. Let's say One Nation manages to win a whole swag of seats. So they end up, somewhere in the 50s and 60s. And say Labor ends up somewhere around the same. So neither of them get government in their own right. And they will require the Liberal Party in that scenario becomes the kingmaker. So whatever the Liberal Party goes with, will form a coalition government with them. Yeah. So Liberal Party can choose to govern with Labor or they can choose to govern with One Nation. And the question is, which one would they go with? And so most people will say, well, obviously they'll go with One Nation. And that's what you would think. You would think that there's more in common between the Liberals and One Nation than the Liberals and Labor.
You would think so, yeah.
Except that they're both established. The thing that the Liberal Party has in common with Labor is they're both established parties, and they arguably both have an interest in stopping an insurgency from taking place. Yeah, by the time, if One Nation is at 50 or 60 seats, then you could say, well, it's too late. It's happened, right?
Yeah.
But there would, by my counting, I reckon there'd be at least a third of the parliamentary Liberal Party that would rather a coalition deal with Labor than with One Nation. Am I off base on this?
It's a Liberal. It is the Uniparty.
The Uniparty.
I don't think it's. That would be going against conventional wisdom.
I'm just putting it out there, though.
Yeah, well, if you look at something like electoral reform, the Liberals often team up with Labor, and that is, this is effectively what has happened in Australia, is that Liberals and Labor vote together to change the electoral laws to keep minor parties out. Yeah, and partly explains why we haven't had the same third party kind of way.
Ascendancy, yeah.
So I don't think you're crazy.
Yeah,
I don't think that's
good. Yeah,
yeah, no, and I guess it all depends on what the.
But it's just something. It's just I want to put that into the public sphere for people to think about. Again, we go back to the examples of continental Europe, and there's many more parties as well. Yes. So you have multi-coalition agreements. So I understand it's different, but it is worth thinking about, and that could also force a split as a Liberal Party in that scenario.
Yeah.
Right. So it's worth thinking about, because there's personally speaking, I'm not sure I believe a lot of these polls that have the seat by seat. I don't like.
Yeah,
so
the
One Nation.
LRP.
Yeah, 50 or 60 seats. I don't know. Maybe it could happen, but I'm just bringing it up because that's now in the debate. And you go, well, let's play this out.
Yeah.
If they do get that and Labor gets 60 to 70, I mean, I guess Labor could get the Teal support in that scenario. But if we are to believe some of this polling, you then need to ask the question, well, what does the Liberal Party as kingmaker?
Yeah.
So the Liberal Party becomes kingmaker of our house. How does that play out?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're thinking about.
No, that's an interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment. But I think you would have to think that the Liberal Party would be with One Nation.
One Nation. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Liberal Party and One Nation.
All right.
Liberal Party going to be the minor party in that.
Minor party in that.
I think.
Yeah. Well, you've also said that Bob Menzies would have probably liked that because he was a One Nation man.
Well,
he wrote an article, very interesting article.
I did.
I want to read this out. I think this is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
If Sir Robert Menzies were alive today, he would probably vote for One Nation. Go on. Why would he vote?
Well,
big statement.
Yeah.
Big statement.
Well,
or is it?
I don't think it is, because the Liberal Party has gone so far. It's departed so far from what it was under Menzies. And there are countless examples of this, but Bob Hawke, he gave this incredible speech in 1965. It was, I believe, it was actually his final major speech that he gave in the Parliament as Prime Minister.
What year, sorry?
65.
You mean Bob Menzies?
Sorry, what did I say?
Bob Hawke. You got the Bobs confused.
Well,
two Bobs worth. Why did you two Bobs worth?
Two Bobs who would support One Nation. I'm getting my One Nation Bobs mixed up. Sorry, Dan. Sorry. Robert Menzies, in 1965, he gave this speech, and he said it was basically this broad, sweeping defense of parliamentary democracy, and saying we absolutely cannot sacrifice policy making to independent bodies and the idea of experts. And he said experts are brilliant, wonderful people who are very smart and can provide us with wonderful advice, but they cannot rule for us. We in Parliament have to maintain our ability to make policy, which is not how the Liberal Party have governed. And at its heart, that is essentially what distinguishes One Nation from Labor and the Liberals. Labor and the Liberals have a shared mode of governing, which is based on expert rule and bureaucratization and expert rule. So they have this professional managerial class who effectively rule the country. One Nation is totally opposed to that. The Liberal Party has been afraid to stand up for Australian symbols. They've been afraid to say, if you come to Australia, then you have to celebrate Australia Day. We have one flag that we're going to, we fly one flag.
I would say until they've done a bit more recently.
A little bit more recently.
But yes, I think since certainly since COVID.
Yeah.
I think it's been missing up until.
Yeah.
More recently when they've seen that,
yeah,
people actually want to hear this.
Yeah. No. I think that's a fair point. But the Liberal Party have let Australians down on unifying national symbols, the importance of a shared culture and our shared institutions, and actually including people into our way of life.
Yeah.
They've been too blasé about people can live different ways of life, and they've basically sacrificed parliamentary democracy. They've been happy to go along with expert rule. And COVID was obviously such a big example of this. So the point that I was making in that article is that if you look at the words of Robert Menzies, you look at the things that he did, you look at the things that he stood for, he has far more in common with One Nation today than he does with the Liberal Party, and obviously than he does with the Labor Party.
Well, he did vote, as you say here, for the Democratic Labor Party.
Yes.
At least twice.
At least twice, yeah.
So that's quite significant. How do we know that he did that? Did he tell someone?
I think that he told B.A. Santa Maria.
Right.
And then it was his daughter or his granddaughter, I think, who later then, Robert Menzies' granddaughter, who then later confirmed. So he had confirmed to his family that he kind of...
Do you know why? What motivated him?
I don't know.
He just wasn't...
There's
no information, public information.
He never justified that decision publicly.
No.
So, but I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did privately and express his frustrations. But this is the thing that I think people have to remember, and people in the Liberal Party and on the right of the centre right have to remember, is Robert Menzies was involved with the UAP. Like, he led the UAP.
Yeah.
And then he and before that, when he was in the Victorian Parliament, he was involved with kind of like a wing of the Nationalist Party that were unhappy with the way things were going. So he was a member of multiple political parties in his lifetime, and he dissolved the UAP when it no longer functioned and created the Liberal Party. And I think that sometimes some people in Australia, like commentators and things in Australia, forget that we actually have a political history that existed before 1949, and it was quite common in the first half of the 20th century for Australian politics to go through these realignments and these reformulations and to have new parties created and kind of shifting alliances. And I think that Robert Menzies, if he were alive today, would see that the Liberal Party it's kind of outlived its purpose. It doesn't have the energy and the dynamism that it did. The energy is clearly with One Nation at the moment, but I think that he would have spotted the trend. He would have been onto this realignment well before the Liberal Party basically had had the carpet pulled from beneath its feet. He would have been an early mover, I think.
Oh, it was published in the Daily Telegraph, and it was very interesting and provocative piece. So we've covered Bob Hawke and Bob Menzies.
Who's next? Who else? Who are the other great great political leaders, great statesmen that we've had? Who would be One Nation? Who would be One Nation voters today?
Probably Billy Hughes.
Billy Hughes.
Oh, yeah. Different era.
Yeah. Well, if for no other reason than famously he was a member of every political party, except the Country Party.
Except the Country Party.
Except the Country Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I thought we could end on a high note, which is the Commonwealth Games.
Yep.
We're smashing it.
Absolutely.
As usual.
Well, yeah, we basically took all the medals, 171 medals. Australia won.
We'll have them all.
70 gold medals, which, we just, it was, it's so great seeing Australia succeed like this. I mean, in Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, it's one of the things that we do so well, particularly, at the Olympics, particularly the swimming, and which generally happens earlier on, so you're riding high early on. But I think it's one of those things that obviously sport has always been one of the things that really, really does unite us as a country. And it's a shame that should have happened just down the road here in Victoria.
Yeah.
But instead it was on the other side of the world. So I don't think that we really got to enjoy the atmosphere and the celebrations that should have been happening.
Well, I think if the Commonwealth Games had have stayed in Victoria, Jacinta Allan would still be Premier. I mean, because you'd have, don't you think?
Well, go on.
Well, firstly, she's Bendigo.
Yeah.
So you would have had, because it was meant to be regional Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
She would have been all over that.
Yeah.
You would have had this as a distraction from the IBAC report that came out.
Yeah.
And I think there would have been a lot of positivity around the success of the Games, Australia succeeding.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It was a terrible move to cancel the Games just on its own merits.
Yeah.
And terrible for the state, terrible for the country that we didn't get to actually host it. And then also, funnily enough, it's been a massive political own goal. I'd have thought that, I mean, I don't think that they could have moved against Jacinta Allan in the middle of the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
So, and by the time it's over, it's too late. So.
Yeah. No, it would have been. Yeah, that's a funny thing to think through. Where would Victorian politics be right now if we had the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's always funny watching, people that hate Australia pretend that they like Australia when we're winning.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, come on Australia. Then they go back. Let's do a voice to Parliament and divide the country. It's like, yeah, how good's Australia?
Yeah.
Straight back into the division thereafter.
Yeah. No, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So nope, it's time to. I think it's time to re-embrace those things. Re-embrace the sport. It's something we're so good at, and we win. And get rid of all the woke crap.
I haven't seen a lot of woke stuff happening at the Comgab, but I haven't paid that much. Maybe
when we're winning so much.
Yeah, who cares?
It becomes hard to watch.
Yeah.
We're just winning.
Yeah.
We're winning so much, you're going to get tired of winning.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, Cian. Thanks. Great to
Thank you.
have a chat. Yep, good stuff. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Dan.